Hi, I'm Gerben.
Hi, I'm Jelle. Gerben, you have some experience with security, right?
Yeah, correct. I have some experience with security. Most of it is on the offensive side. So testing security, doing software assessments. But today I want to show you something more on the what we call the blue side or the blue team side. And that's on the defensive side. So I want to show you first a little bit of general information about what kind of tools can we use, a little bit also about terms, and then dive into a specific Microsoft Azure solution called Sentinel, which is, and then we dive directly into the terms, which is a so-called SIEM. And a SIEM is a security information and event management system.
Yep.
Mouthful. And it's part of, and another term, a SOC. So if you want to do a good security operations, you will need a so-called SOC, a security operations center. That's on the one part, that's about your team. It's about having 24/7 duty, having a incident response ready. But it's also, you need a view about your system, about your landscape. You need to see if there is a potential attack.
Correct, yeah. So are we talking about your software development team, that's the SOC, or are we talking about, you might be looking into a specialized SOC?
Yeah, the second one. So most of the time you have a dedicated team who is specialized in building a SOC, but also operating a SOC. So it's not about developers. Developers can incorporate parts that make it easier to monitor events, etc. But this is more about the team that's doing the security operations. I can imagine when a company wants to do this, that it can come from the development team in first instance. But I think it's something that needs to be part of a real team.
Okay. So which companies that currently do not have SOCs or might have slightly dysfunctional SOCs, what kind of size companies, what kind of type of companies are we talking about here?
Yeah, I think eventually all companies who have software running in production can benefit from having an overview of their landscape on a security basis. So what you see now is that the real big companies, they have SOCs and they get SOCs, but I think it will move from large companies to medium-sized companies. But even small companies will benefit from having a good overview of what's happening.
So this sounds like a problem of manpower where you would need a lot of automation to get this working as a small company. But I feel like you might dive into that. So you named SIEM and you named SOC.
Yeah, so I want to dive into SIEM, so the Security Information and Event Management. See that as, I don't know if you saw pictures of a SOC, but then you see a lot of monitors, a lot of diagrams, and that's most of the time that's a SIEM. So a SIEM is a central part of a SOC where all the data that you collect from all the things that you have in your landscape, can be virtual machines, can be Azure resources, it can, as you can see in the pictures, it can be routers, firewalls. So everything, all that data is ingested, and then you need to display it, and you need to have alerts, you need to react to it, or you can try to dive into the data and see if a attack is happening or if there's something suspicious happening.
So you're saying it needs to be centralized. So why is that so important that it's centralized? Why not just disperse it over multiple systems?
I think you want to have it centralized. You have one view most of the time because you also need to correlate data, because something happening on one part of the system may not be a trigger per se, but if multiple things happen in multiple parts of your system, for instance, you see something on your firewall, you see something on your application, maybe you see something in your Azure Active Directory, and then correlating that, and that will result in a signal. So I think that's why it's important to have all those things centralized, to have one view. And also what you see a lot is that companies have a lot of resources. You need one centralized space, one centralized system where everything gets together and there is one overview.
So if you are unable to set up a SIEM, centralized at least, then probably you'll have multiple problems further down the line. And also previously, it seems like something that you should be able to accomplish with most architectures, with most landscapes.
Yes. Yeah, I don't think it really, the depends on the architecture. It's more about, are you able to collect the data, ingest the data, and then view the data? And we'll see here, and I will go to the next slide, is Microsoft Sentinel. That's a solution in Azure. A SIEM has multiple things that you need to fill in. So one is you need data. So you need to collect data. Yeah. Most of the time that's called an agent or some way that you can ingest all the data. For instance, in the demo we will see on your Azure resource groups or your subscription, you can enable activity logging, and you can also enable it to ship that to Log Analytics workspace. Yep. All the data gets collected there. All the data that gets collected needs to be ingested. So Microsoft Sentinel will ingest all the data from your Log Analytics workspace. And then it can do several things. One is you can have alerting rules. And we'll see that in a moment, that you have a nice dashboard. You can also try to dive into that data. So try to see if there are novel attacks or things going on. And then if you find them, make a rule about it. Mm-hmm. And you also have the possibility to create more dashboard-like workbooks where you centralized some data about your system. So that's the detect and investigate, and then you have the response, but that's more what your team needs to do. But there's also the possibility in Sentinel to do automated responses. For instance, to disable access to resource groups, or to based on a trigger, based on data, do some automated stuff.
Yeah, so not just alerting, sending an email to the manager, something might be wrong, but actual
doing
prevention stuff. And mitigation strategies.
Yes, yeah, correct. So that's the Microsoft Sentinel solution. A little bit about what you need to set this up. You have a 30-day trial period to set up Microsoft Sentinel, so you can just use it. It's quite, the barrier is quite low. You need a Log Analytics workspace because that's the key thing where all the data gets ingested.
Yeah, but if you're making use of logging in any way, then probably you already have one.
Yeah, but this needs a dedicated workspace where all the data that's needed for Microsoft Sentinel is.
At least you'll have the experience of working with it then.
Yeah, correct. Also, one of the things is what you want to do is to up the retention time. So standard, you have a 30-day retention time, Log Analytics. Some attackers or some events spread over more than those 30 days. So it's advised by Microsoft to increase it to a 90 days retention time.
That might still be too little, probably.
Yeah, but this is the advice by Microsoft. So up it to at least 90 days retention time. You need contributor permission on the subscription. That's something that's most of the time if you want to use that kind of stuff. But also Microsoft Sentinel itself. Yeah,
but taking that backwards, that means that you can prevent some of your employees from diving into the SIEM, getting all of it out of it, so that you can have a dedicated SOC that works with the SIEM, and that other employees may not be able to access it.
Yeah, correct. So, now I want to show you first a little bit about the pricing, and then we dive a little bit in Sentinel. Give you an overview of what you can see, how you can dive into stuff.
You promised me a demo, so let's go through the pricing.
So first off, then a little bit about the pricing model. Several models. The first one is the pay-as-you-go. So then the amount that's listed here, in this case €5 per ingested gigabyte of data. If you have more, then you can have like a tiered model. If you have more than 100 gigabytes ingested per day, then this table speaks for itself.
You get you pay less if you are a big user.
Yeah. You can imagine if you centralize all the data, and if you have even a medium size, but also when you have a big environment in Azure, this can get really big, really fast, because you ingest all the events into it. Yeah, so this is the pricing model. Now, and then
this is a bit of a investment. Let's say it's a lot. It's a lot of money.
Correct.
For big companies, it's not a lot of money, but it's still it's something you think about, the costs. But it's security. So usually it's you're trying to prevent larger
if
unexpected costs.
If you think about the cost that you have when, for instance, you have a ransomware attack or you lose business for several days, maybe weeks, I think that then the cost of this is not that high.
And there's a lot of side effects where your SOC will probably, besides security, also get a lot of other insights into your applications.
Yep.
So interesting. All right.
Okay, so I've set up Microsoft Sentinel here. I already did some stuff to get data ingested. Now you have to think about that. It's working on log analytics, on ingesting data. So the moment you enable it, it will not be the same moment that you see something. You have to wait for maybe several minutes, but several hours to.
There's a delay.
There's a delay, so that's why I did it. Normally, the first time when you create a Microsoft Sentinel, then this is all empty. You can see here a nice overview. I have some incidents already. In a moment, I will show you how you can create them and why we see those incidents. But the first time, you need to add some content. So then you go to the Content Hub. This is where Microsoft created packages, and there's packages of several things. So you can have data connectors in Sentinel, so that's how you can ingest. We will use the Azure activity in this demonstration, and there's one connector, and what this will do is it will enable a policy that will add the activity logs to ship it to the log analytics. So you can enable the activity logs on the subscription. You can also export them to other data sources, Event Hub, but also to log analytics. And so when we click on, for instance, this Azure activity, you can also see that this contains one data connector, that there is an analytic rule and a hunting query. A hunting query is what I told you is where you can have more insights in your data. I will show that in a moment. But there are some predefined queries on your log analytics to have some more insights. Maybe see if there are any rogue resources or if something is created very fast. You can do everything on Sentinel is based on log analytics queries. Yes. So that's the main basis. And this Content Hub is just a package where you can add those data connectors. You can see when you open the data connector that there is, when you open that package, that there is one data connector. This is the Azure activity. This is the data connector that we use. I can go to the connector page. And you can see that data is already ingested.
So which actions triggered this ingestion?
Yeah, so then maybe it's a good time to jump to the policy. So what it does is it creates a policy to add Azure activity logs to all your resources, your subscriptions. So that's one of the things that we do. There is a rule on the activity logs that it ships. So all Azure activities, and you must think of creating resources, editing them, assigning rights, roles, everything is then logged to the activity log and then shipped to Sentinel. And that's what's logged here. So this is the activity log, or at least what is left of it in the log analytics workspace. So all the data that is ingested. If we run a simple query, and in this case it's logged in the table Azure activity, and you can see here all the events that happened on my subscription. So if I created several storage accounts, you can see it here. I edited some stuff. That's all.
Is that a logical scoping for Microsoft Sentinel? One subscription, or can you scope it wider, or should you scope it to a resource group, or?
Yeah, you can scope it to whatever you want. The standard policy is scoped to the subscription, for instance, or you can also add a resource group. But you can add, because it's a central place, you can have multiple subscription, all placing data into this one log analytics workspace. There's also a new, I think it's in preview, where it's possible to centralize multiple Sentinel instances. So you can have multiple Sentinel instances on your subscriptions, but then have one overview.
Distributed centralization, basically.
Yeah. So because that's what you want. If you have multiple subscriptions in a big company, you also want to have one overview.
Yeah. So you're showing me all kinds of fancy UI-based Azure interaction with the Sentinel, but is there? Can I use APIs? Can I, for instance, integrate my Sentinel into a management application or something?
No, because this is your management application.
Yes.
Yep.
So your SOC is working from.
This is your SOC. So this is your SOC. So this is what you would show on the big display. One of the things that's also nice is that within those content packages, for instance, you have so-called workbooks. I can show you one here. This is a activity workbook. You can make your own if you want. And this is a standard dashboard. In this case, it shows you the resource group activity.
Yeah.
It also shows the people who are creating stuff, who are deleting stuff. In this case, it's me on my own subscription.
Makes sense.
Yeah, makes sense. So, but you can also, this is just a template. You can edit it. You can do whatever you want. Yeah. But this should be then one of the things that's on all those big screens. Because with this, you can see anomalies. Maybe if there is one account that you do not know, or and you see creating, deleting, updating things, that can be a signal for you to start investigating.
Yeah, so basically the Microsoft Sentinel is very, very configurable, and that makes it a suited area for your entire team to look into.
Yeah, so it's very configurable, and then with those content hubs, Microsoft provides all kinds of ready-made data connectors, ready-made workbooks that you can start using. One of the things that I want to show to you is another thing is hunting.
Yep.
There you can make queries. So also Microsoft has some default queries for you. One of the things that I want to show you here is Azure Cloud Shell usage. If you look into, there is also a nice description about why you want to do this. So this query sees if there are any Cloud Shell sessions, because that could be a signal that something is compromised. Not that it is a signal, it could be a signal. Microsoft also...
Again, the correlations matter here.
Yeah, correlations matter. And also what Microsoft is doing is it's categorizing in so-called TTPs, so technique, tactics, and practices. That's a common way in the security world to classify also certain actors to see how they enter the system, and that's also what you can see here. For instance, on this row, you can see is this hunting query about initial access or execution or trying to be persistent in your system. So you have a nice overview. We can run this query, this Cloud Shell query. Let's see some of the results. And with this, you can see, for instance, that I did something with spinning up a Cloud Shell.
What a surprise!
What a surprise! Almost looked like prepared.
Almost.
And the last thing that I want to show you, that's in this nice dashboard, you can see that there are several incidents, and that's on the alerting. Let me see where that one is. So let's go to Content Hub. We need to go to the analytics. There's one rule here. And there are several rules, but there's one rule that I defined myself. I named it Find Rogue Storage. And what this one does, it has a query defined by me. Very simple. So here you can see that you can define your own queries based on that Azure Activity Table. If it contains the name Sentinel Rogue, its storage account, then this alert will trigger. So in this case, it's a scheduled alert. You can see it here. When we go to the analytics rule, you can define the rule logic, but you can also say when this is triggered. In this case, it runs every 5 hours. It runs automatically. You can define what happens. Do I need to enable a alerting group? Do I need to send messages? You can also see here part of the automated response. So that's one of the pillars of this SIEM. You could also do automated response. Did not configure it here, but it will run this query every 5 hours now, and if it finds some data, then you can see it on the dashboard, and it will put up an alert, and then you can also respond to that alert. Right. So you can say, for instance, okay, I know this alert. I've seen it. It's all done with it. I've handled it, and then you're ready to go to the next alert. Yeah, so this is a little bit of what you can expect from Microsoft Sentinel.
So what I really find interesting is that so there's a lot of automation going on, but Microsoft has advice on you should consider this a threat and you might want to think about this, but in the end it's going to be pretty application specific or at least like it's specific for you, so you'll need to tweak it. Is there a, like, I would think maybe a simulated attack or a pen test while you set up everything might be very interesting to do like a quick training round, but is that that useful?
Yeah, that's very useful, but then you go more into, with this talk we talked about the blue team, then you go into the red team, and what you then should do is hire a red teaming, and if you have a good red teaming team or a good red teaming company, then you could even say to them, I want you to simulate this kind of TTPs. So I want you to use these techniques, tactics and practices to simulate an attack. And then what you could do is not inform your blue team and then see if they could detect those signals. And then based on that maybe add some rules and see if with those rules they would have detected those signals. So
kind of like scientific blind testing where the blue team is not aware.
Correct.
But we can test the setup.
Yep.
Interesting. So let's say that I represent a small or medium-sized company. I know there's a 30-day trial period.
Yep.
All right, cool. How would you advise me to set this up? What do I just play around with it, or would you say, well, you'll need someone dedicated to guide you through the trial period and make the most of it?
I think what I saw so far from Sentinel itself, that it's pretty straightforward, at least to configure data sources, to add queries, workbooks. I think the most information you could benefit from is a team that knows which kind of rules, which kind of TTPs are a good way to add first to your system. I think you need more knowledge from that than you need from I think setting it up and connecting, from what I saw and experimented with, it's pretty straightforward, pretty easy. To have the correct rule set, to have the correct workbook set up, I think there you can have some information.
And
but for instance,
that's going to be iterative, like software development, right? You'll need to keep up. You'll need to continuously improve.
Correct. Yeah, and I think one of those things that I showed you, I think starting with, for instance, those Azure Activity, you get a pretty decent insight in what's happening in your subscription and what's happening inside your resource groups. I would advise to start with that first and see what you can learn from it, what kind of signals you can have, and then see where you can add stuff.
Yeah, start small, grow bigger.
Yep, I think that's the advice. And
very interesting. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Well, I feel a lot more secure. And I think that's it for today.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for watching.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.